for Super Wild Card Weekend. Also coming up next hour, Tayshaun Gibson, Niners safety, had a couple of picks last week. It's going to be pouring rain with maybe 20-mile-an-hour winds in Santa Clara. This right here is the world's most interesting former offensive lineman. Brian Baldinger, good to see you.
Thank you, Andrew. It's good to be with you. Weather. Weather and football always kind of go together.
We'll also work in traffic to this story some point as well. Let's get the Derek Carr news right out of the way. Speaking of traffic, see what we did there? Derek Carr is about to move on, which you kind of saw coming here when the Raiders announced they were starting Jarrett Stidham, and Carr said he wasn't going to be there with the team the last couple of weeks. Ian Rapoport says that the Raiders have, let's see how we're wording this, because the wording is important here, begun the process of evaluating the trade market for Derek Carr. The quarterback has since tweeted a goodbye. We'll get to that goodbye coming up shortly. Ian is here. Tom is here. Ian, this is in essence the Raiders' way of saying operators are standing by. We will trade, or rather take your trade calls.
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to sum it up. The Raiders need to gauge the market, see what it is, see how hot Derek Carr's name is. And you know, in this league, Andrew, finding a quarterback is the most important thing. There are many quarterback-needy teams, and there will be more as we get into the offseason. So the Raiders, who seem to be moving on in their minds, not firmly and finally, but moving on in their minds from Derek Carr, need to figure out what is the trade market. And Tom, of course, time is of the essence here. There's a firm deadline here, February 15th. At that point, $40.4 million in salary becomes fully guaranteed for Derek Carr. So that is when a decision point needs to be made. A trade could be difficult, but not impossible. And yes, the Raiders are going to be speaking to teams soon to figure out what is there for Derek Carr.
Ian, there are some parallels here to when Matthew Stafford and the Lions agreed to go their separate ways a couple of years ago. They engaged with teams, were able to move forward, find a path, and ultimately he was traded in a deal to the Rams that got done on January 30th. What didn't exist in that case was that early vesting of the guarantees. If Derek Carr were still on the Raiders roster, which quite frankly, he's not going to be, at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday, February 14th, then an additional $40 million plus would become fully guaranteed. So a very clear timestamp here. The Raiders have 1 month to get a deal done with Derek Carr. He has control over this, as all high-paid players do, but specifically with a no-trade clause. That's where the sides now will work together, see if there's a spot that makes sense for him to be traded. Hypothetically, the teams also could agree to push back that vesting option here. But from Carr's standpoint, it also may make sense if he does not find a trade to a team that he wants to go to, simply say, you've got to either keep me or release me, in which case I believe the expectation, again, not firm and final. We know what happened with Jimmy Garoppolo last year, but the expectation certainly would be that Derek Carr then will become a free agent.
All right, Derek Carr, after this news, Ian, Tom, thank you. We'll be back momentarily with some Lamar Jackson news. Went to Twitter and said goodbye. Said thank you to Raider Nation for a great 9 years. Mentioned the fans in Oakland, certainly the fans in Vegas. Said that, and this is interesting, that he wishes he could have been there the last couple of weeks to say goodbye in person. Regardless, it's on to a next chapter. Said that even though he had said in the past that he only wants to play for the Raiders, that championship fire still burns in him. So clearly Derek Carr is ready for that next chapter. We can have fun with the cut lines here. Raiders put used car on market, however you want to do it. Baldy, Mark Ross, from a front office perspective. Mark, what is the market for Derek Carr?
Well, I think it'll be robust, as Tom and Ian laid out there, that Derek kind of he holds all the cards, all the leverage. The Raiders don't have a lot of leverage because there's the deadline, and if not, you got to give this guy the money. So teams coming into this know that they won't start high. They'll start low on this bidding with Derek. Now, maybe once things intensify and teams start bidding against themselves, it'll jump up to maybe even a 1. We've seen the past couple years Carson Wentz deals and Matt Ryan deals that are kind of been all over the place, but seem to have overpaid for some of those players like Carson Wentz. So I would think the Raiders would eventually get something real well, start out slow, but then get something to their liking. But Derek Carr, I think, will definitely choose a spot where it's the stability. It's a great head coach. It's a great environment for him. When I'm looking at it all, you got Sean Payton possibly out there. And that would seem to be the type of guy, a fresh start, but also to take his game to the next level. When Drew Brees and Sean Payton united, eerily similar, where Drew Brees was good, not great. Sean Payton unlocked that Hall of Fame level. Could that be the same sort of situation here, those two guys locking up, Baldy?
Yeah, and that's really the question, Baldy. What are we buying here? If I'm the team trading for Derek Carr, got all these fourth quarter comebacks, 2 playoff appearances, only 1 that he was able to play in last year. Obviously, they were 1 and done. He's 31.
Yeah, but he's been healthy, all right? So, and he's been dependable, and we know that he's a good leader. We saw it with all the fracture that happened with the Raiders a year ago. I just don't, the last time we saw him on the field in Pittsburgh, he wasn't very good. And he ended with a bad interception with a chance to maybe go down and win that game. So that's disappointing. I didn't feel like he elevated the players around him enough this year. That's what you want your star quarterback to do. To Mark's point, maybe the right coach can be a good fit with Derek. We know he's all in. We know he's a committed player, and he's been healthy. All those things are positives. I don't think he played great this year. 60% completion quarterback, probably too many interceptions. But I think those things can be improved upon in the right system with the right guys.
And you're curious what the market has been when you've seen, like Matt Ryan, obviously much older, has been to a Super Bowl, go from Atlanta to Indy.
Well, the fact is,
see the Indy trade as well of Carson Wentz back to Washington. The rotating quarterback
carousel
shares.
So when this was a 12-team league, there wasn't enough good quarterbacks in the league. There's not enough good starting quarterbacks. Derek can fill a slot someplace. He's going to have some leverage in where he goes.
All right, the Raiders obviously did not make the playoffs in Josh McDaniels' first year. Mark, thank you. Be right back in a second. Let's get to the teams that did make the playoffs, notably here the Baltimore Ravens. And what was notable yesterday is Lamar Jackson is still not on the practice field. And if he cannot go this coming weekend, Sunday night, Super Wild Card Weekend, it will be the 11th game the last 2 years he misses in December and January. So what's going on in Baltimore? Tom Pelissero, any more clarity today or any thought that in the next hour when the Ravens take the field, Lamar Jackson's going to be with them?
Well, Andrew, we'll be watching for that, but after missing 16 consecutive practices in 5 games, it's hard to imagine Lamar Jackson playing with not even 1 full week of practice. He's been dealing with that PCL injury for close to 6 weeks now. The Ravens initially hoped this would be maybe an injury that kept him out 2 or 3 weeks. They also have their backup quarterback, Tyler Snoop Huntley, who was limited in practice yesterday, did not throw in front of reporters because he's dealing with an injury to his throwing shoulder and his wrist. All of which brings us to the possibility, and again, we will see Lamar, Tyler, whether they do anything in practice today. If neither of them can go, it would be an undrafted rookie, Anthony Brown, starting a playoff game against Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Anthony Brown, who turned the ball over 3 times last week. By the end of the game, he had some decent passing numbers, but the 3 turnovers killed the Ravens in Week 18 in Cincinnati. Thank you, Tom Pelissero. You don't want to have to think about that. Anthony Brown starting against Joe Burrow. The difference is notable. With him, they score points, Baldy. Without him, they do not. We can talk all you want about Roquan Smith or Marlon Humphrey or Calais Campbell and that Ravens defense, what they can do to potentially shut down Joe Burrow. But the fact is, if they don't have Lamar Jackson, how do they possibly score enough points to keep up?
Well, I mean, it's going to be difficult because if you look at Cincinnati from their side right here, they're looking at every defense looks at who's the quarterback. Who do we have to fear? Like, there's no fear if Anthony Brown's out there. There's no fear, quite frankly, if Snoop is out there. If Lamar is out there in whatever capacity, he presents a much bigger threat where you have to figure out your defense. You have to game plan for Lamar in ways that you have to do for the other 2 quarterbacks. And so, look, it's disappointing. I would have thought that Lamar would at least try, 16 straight practices and not being out there, at least try to be out there to give his team some hope. I mean, it's just a big difference when a guy of his caliber is on the field, just on the field, and in any capacity versus not being there. You feel as a team that you're missing your most electric component and your best chance to defeat a very good Cincinnati Bengals.
What's the better option? Tyler Huntley running the offense that has gotten you there with a quarterback run game is something you have to prepare for, or Lamar Jackson wearing a massive brace as a statue, immobile?
Well, you'd rather have the healthy, Tyler Huntley, quite frankly, but you don't know what the adrenaline game day can do, a playoff game. He knows what his playoff record is. Like, you're looking for a contract, you have to improve your playoff record, you have to get out there. I would say that an adrenalized game day Lamar might be a better option, no matter what capacity he's in right now.
I'm not suggesting he's even able to go out there with the brace. I'm just spitballing here. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because you have to fundamentally change the offense if Lamar Jackson stands back there.
They're always going to be a run-based offense.
Obviously.
JK, Gus, I mean, and Tyler or Lamar, that's who they are.
You have an entire offense built around quarterback mobility. Baldy coming back in a second. Let's get to some other quarterback news, if you will. The news, obviously, that we've talked about all week is the fact that Dak Prescott's thrown a pick in 7 consecutive games here heading into the postseason. Mike McCarthy also has to worry about the other quarterback Monday night. That other quarterback is Tom Brady.
I think you got to embrace these opportunities. I mean, think about it. I mean, you're talking about, clearly probably the most decorated, player of our generation. I mean, maybe even the history of the National Football League. So, I mean, that speaks to what he's accomplished. But I know as competitors, we're all excited about this opportunity to compete against Tom. But at the end of the day, this is football. It's more about the 11 and all the things that go into it. But yeah, I would say, and that's something you can ask the players in the locker room. I mean, we're excited about this opportunity.
On Monday night in primetime, as the Cowboys try to add to their franchise playoff win total of 35, which is, well, look what we did there. The same number of playoff games that Tom Brady has won. A rematch from Week 1 where the Bucs won 19-3. Judy Batista in Dallas. That's the game. Dak Prescott in the fourth quarter broke his thumb. But before he broke his thumb, that offense wasn't doing anything.
No, and part of the reason why the offense wasn't doing anything is they were taking it to Dak Prescott. They were bringing the pressure. They blitzed a lot. Between Dak and Cooper Rush, they had 4 sacks, lots of